A lot of famous people have lived in London, which means a lot of famous people have died in London. I've always had a curious fascination with celebrity death sites and famous grave sites, and in London, these are seemingly endless. Visiting these sites can either give you a brush with greatness or a place that you can pay respects to your heroes. I'm here at Freddie Mercury's house, and this is a must-stop if you're going to do a London death tour. But today, we're also going to do 4 famous cemeteries, and we're going to do 2 historical sites that have a lot of famous people buried at them. And at the end of the video, I'm going to take you to a place that I actually had to talk my way into.
Our first stop takes us to North London.
This is Golders Green Crematorium. It is the oldest crematorium in the UK and the first in London.
Although Golders Green is a predominantly Jewish area of London, all denominations are welcome and all types of services take place here.
There are many famous people whose final resting place is here at Golders Green Crematorium. I'm going to show you a few.
There are 3 different ways to find people here. There are plaques on the walls outside, there are urns that are indoors, and there are ashes buried on the grounds. If you're facing the entrance, the left-handmost columbaria has Keith Moon's plaque. This is also where you'll find the plaque for jazz musician Ronnie Scott, who founded the famous Soho Jazz Club. Glam rock superstar Mark Bolan from T-Rex has both a plaque, and as you walk through the grounds, you can find his bench where his remains are buried.
As you would expect from a cemetery, Golders Green's grounds are very peaceful. There's memorials, gardens, benches, and a fountain where you can sit down and quietly reflect.
As you explore the grounds, you'll find 2 more very famous graves. The first is for Jack Bruce, the bassist for Cream. And the second is for Inspector Clouseau himself, Peter Sellers, who has both a plaque and a marker where his ashes are buried. Unfortunately, the Ernest George Columbarium was closed, but you can call the crematorium's office and make an appointment to see the ashes for Sigmund Freud, Dracula writer Bram Stoker, and ballerina Anna Pavlova.
There are only 8 crematoriums in London, so Golders Green has served a lot of people who want to have their ashes taken elsewhere.
The list includes former Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, punk legend Ian Drury, Cats writer T.S. Eliot, who must be glad he didn't live to see the dreadful movie made from his poems, Jungle Book writer Rudyard Kipling, War of the Worlds and Time Machine writer H.G. Wells, and singer Amy Winehouse, whose footprint is all over North London. And 2 of the greatest characters in cinema history were cremated here. Vivien Leigh, who played Scarlett O'Hara, and Peter O'Toole, who played Lawrence of Arabia.
For anybody who's into cemetery or gravesite tours, I would highly recommend Golders Green Crematorium. The grounds are beautiful and they're very well kept up, and there's some really amazing sites here, whether they're memorials or actual grave sites you can visit.
On to the next stop.
The most famous cemetery in London is arguably Highgate.
The trust that runs the cemetery is well aware of its appeal, so they charge admission to those who are not visiting permanently.
For £10 you can get a ticket for both the East and the West cemeteries, and for £7 you can get one for just the East Cemetery, which is a little bit bigger and has more of the recognizable graves.
I'll visit both of them with you today.
The West Cemetery is smaller and more wooded than the East Cemetery, but aside from Egyptian Avenue, a circle of crypts carved into the hill, the 3 celebrity graves are the attraction in this section. Ian Holm, Bilbo Baggins from Lord of the Rings, and Ash from Alien has an amazing stone. And Roger Rabbit's Bob Hoskins is here as well.
Probably the most famous grave in all of Highgate is the guy behind me. But you gotta know his name because he only puts his real name on the grave. A lot of people don't even know that they're looking at George Michael.
Now that we found all the famous graves in the West Cemetery, let's head on down to the East Cemetery.
The west side of the cemetery might not have the most famous person. However, there are a lot of notable graves on this side, so let's go visit a few.
Karl Marx with his big honking head is probably the most recognizable stone in the whole cemetery.
Douglas Adams wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
There's a cup in front of his stone where people leave pens in remembrance. Pop artist Patrick Caulfield has the cheekiest tombstone in London. And in terms of design, Sex Pistols manager Malcolm McLaren has my favorite marker. Visitors leave items like safety pins and guitar picks in his honor.
Our last Highgate visit is with Storm Thorgerson. Now you might not know his name, but I bet you know his work. He did the album covers for all of these bands.
If you saw Pink Floyd go by, then you might have correctly assumed that one of the most famous album covers ever was his design.
As a former graphic designer, I am proud to honor Storm at his final resting place. Well done, Storm. Between all the famous graves and the really cool stones, I guess if you're going to visit one cemetery in London, it should be Highgate.
And now on to Kensington.
Our next stop is here at the Brompton Cemetery. This massive cemetery runs between Chelsea and Earl's Court.
I find that this cemetery is very easy to navigate as it's laid out in a grid system. I wouldn't say there's a lot of famous people here, but there's a lot of people who have made significant contributions to the City of London. This is appropriately where Henry Mears and Claude Kirby, founders of Chelsea Football Club, are buried, as the cemetery is in the shadow of Stamford Bridge. Now on to the reason that I came here.
In addition to the Chelsea founders, you also find suffragette Emily Pankhurst here, and John Snow, the guy that stopped the cholera outbreak of 1866. But I'm here to pay my respects to Kit Lambert, who was the manager of The Who. Well done, Kit.
Brompton Cemetery is a popular cut-through between Chelsea and Kensington, but I think it's a very pleasant walk on top of that. London has what is known as the Magnificent Seven cemeteries, but we're only visiting the top 4 with the most famous graves.
And the last famous London cemetery we'll visit today is Kensal Green.
I'm looking specifically for a pretty hard to find grave, but I think I see it up ahead.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know that he had passed away, but this is the grave for Peter Burns from Dead or Alive.
You're surely familiar with their big song. This is also where you'll find the final resting place of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, the great architect and engineer who built Paddington Station.
Kensal Green is actually the closest crematorium to the center of London, so like Golders Green, a lot of people get cremated here but have their ashes taken elsewhere.
That list includes Ingrid Bergman, The Clash's Joe Strummer, actor Alan Rickman, and probably most famously Freddie Mercury, whose ashes are said to be spread in the gardens of his Kensington mansion.
We've seen a couple crematoriums and we've seen a couple of cemeteries, but those aren't the only places with famous resting spots in London. One of them being St. Paul's Cathedral.
As if you need a reason to visit this architectural masterpiece, here's where you'll find the crypts of Cathedral architect Christopher Wren, Arthur Wellesley, the first Duke of Wellington, and England's greatest war hero, Lord Admiral Nelson, the fellow that's at the top of the column in Trafalgar Square.
I don't think anybody could argue that the most famous London burial site is Westminster Abbey.
You'll find the tombs of famous scientists, poets, actors, politicians, and all types of royalty. There are far too many to list them all, but a tour of Westminster Abbey will include the resting places of Charles Darwin, Sir Laurence Olivier, Geoffrey Chaucer, Stephen Hawking, Queen Elizabeth I, Edward the Confessor, Sir Isaac Newton, and Charles Dickens.
There is an admission fee, and usually there's a bit of a wait, so make sure you book ahead of time if you want to avoid that, but I guarantee you it's worth it.
And now, as promised, the bonus gravesite.
Behind me is the Chelsea Royal Hospital burial ground. It's completely gated in, but there's a very famous grave inside there.
I really wanted to see and include this grave, so I told the security guard that she was my auntie, and he let me in. And here she is, Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, buried less than a kilometer from her home. It wasn't easy, but I got to pay my respects.
As you saw, there are a lot of interesting grave sites in London, and outside of London, you can find the graves for such legends as Winston Churchill, Brian Jones of the Stones, Queen Elizabeth II at Windsor Castle, and Led Zeppelin drummer John Bonham. So have you visited any of these places? Or did I miss any of the important London sites? Please let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, please like, subscribe, and share. Make me feel like I've accomplished something before I'm ready to move on. Cheers.